Today we're going to talk about something just a bit different. We're going to talk about proof. What does proof mean? And what kind of evidence do we have that supports our claim that Sasquatch actually lives? Does he live? Or is he a figment of our imagination? Let's look into this just a bit. First, one question I get more than anything, one situation that comes up most often is, where's the proof? All this work and you don't have 1 ounce of proof. Well, let me emphasize one thing. You cannot prove anything. You can only offer evidence. When you're confronting skeptics, they will make outrageous claims. Ask for the source of those claims. When they make a statement that you don't agree with, simply ask, who made that statement? Where did it come from? What's your source? Demand that any statement made as a representation be substantiated by a reference to the person who made the statement. That's not too much to ask. If a personal opinion is expressed, ask how or why the speaker is qualified to make such an assumption. Believe me, I hear assumptions all the time. That doesn't mean the person who's making the assumption has any reason or rationale for it. They just do it. How much research time do you have? Do you have a personal experience, or are you relying on what others have said? Remember this also. There are different levels of personal experiences. The person who sees one from his car for a flashing moment as he's driving 70 miles an hour on the interstate knows nothing about how their children are born, although he'll tell you he does. The person that saw one 2 ridges away knows absolutely nothing about how they take a mate and how they live their lives, but he'll tell you he does too. So what is your personal experience? What are you basing these facts on? Don't argue with these people. If they will not listen to a logical presentation, they are totally unconvincible, and they're not worth the time and the energy you would expend. And never raise your voice. When voices go up, all reason departs. Merely state that you do not have time for spurious argument, but if they wish to speak from factual statements, not hearsay, and not innuendo, then you're willing. This is important. And this is step 1 to understanding and to relaying that understanding. Let's establish a point of reference here. As I said, we cannot prove anything. We can only offer evidence. It is up to the listener to determine how much evidence is required to constitute proof in his mind. If I said it's raining, it would probably only take a glance outside to confirm or deny that statement. But if I said wet paint, I'm sure it would cause some people to at least have to touch it to find out. This different levels of proof requirement is why there's 12 jurors on a jury panel. Each one will require a different level of evidence to constitute guilt. That's very important. And all 12 of them must agree that the defendant is guilty or he is simply acquitted. We all come from different backgrounds. We have different teaching. We had different parents. We see things differently. There was a study done recently in an inner city ghetto area. They took a number of very young children and showed them a teddy bear, then asked them to identify it. Over 95% of those young children identified that teddy bear as a rat. Why? They knew what rats were. They had never seen a teddy bear in their life. I'm going to illustrate this with an example from a book written by a person who I happen to know. He's passed on now. His name is Stephen Covey. He was a professor at Brigham Young University, and he wrote a book called The Divine Center. In this book, he has an illustration that demonstrates this point very vividly. Now, you're going to have to work with me on this because we're not working from a one-on-one contact here. But if you'll bring in another person to watch this with you and do as I say, you'll get the idea of what we're talking about. First, I want one of the two of you to watch the first picture I show. The other one is not to see it. Then I will tell you, and you will reverse that. The person who saw the first picture will now look away and not see the second picture. I will then show both of you a third picture. Then I want you to tell me what you see. Well, in this case, tell one another what you see. My bet is that you will each see something differently. Okay, are you ready now? Remember, no peeking. Person number one, here's your picture. Okay, picture number one is done. It's gone. First person, look away now. And person number two, turn around and see what's coming. Here comes picture number two. Are you ready? Now. Okay, now that is gone. Now, both of you turn around and look at the screen, and we will have picture number three. It's okay, you can both peek at this one. And here it comes, now. How about it? Did you see something different? This picture number three, is that a young lady or is that an old lady? What do you see? Talk about it with your partner and you decide which is which. Now, why did that work that way? Very simply because I set you up for it. I gave you teaching in one direction or the other direction. That became your experience level. So when you both looked at the common picture, you both saw it from a different angle. Remember this when discussing things that you have seen. It will vary depending on your history and on your viewpoint. There are different types of evidence. First, and the most reliable, is what is called empirical evidence. It's reproducible. It's the best. It is quantifiable and it is measurable. Things like footprints and trackways, fingerprints, tissue, even scat samples. And the best of all today is DNA. In fact, this is the only evidence that modern science will accept. Why? Because it can be reproduced. And I believe scientists are lazy. They don't want to have to go and do their own field research. They would rather just reproduce what somebody else has done. The second form of evidence is expert testimony. But then we get into things like ClimateGate. How expert did that become when you have a whole series of emails back and forth talking about how they cooked the books to make the outcome reach what they wanted to do? There are many, many examples of this. That's just one. You have to know who your expert is and what makes them an expert. Remember, as I said in the beginning, it's all right to ask your testifier where he gets his information. What is his experience that allows him to make such judgments to begin with? The third type of evidence is eyewitness testimony, and we know how reliable that is. Just look at the demonstration we just did. It's only as good as the eyewitness at very best. What is his reputation? Is he qualified to comment? Is he qualified to observe? The fourth level is anecdotal evidence. The story. This is what happened. I saw this. This happened to him. Again, this is very highly dependent dependent on the quality of the person offering the testimony. There again, you have to know their background. Where did they come from? How are they qualified? And the fifth is hearsay. My brother-in-law said, and believe me, that is not really evidence. It's not allowed in court. Why? Because you weren't there. You can't be cross-examined. All you know is what you were told. When someone offers up evidence, question his source. How do you know this? What qualifies you to make this assessment? Who authored this? And what are his? Now, we have discussed the rules of evidence. We have talked about the types of evidence and what constitutes each. Let's move from that now and talk a little bit about logic. It's important that we view things that happen in our lives in a logical and clear manner. In doing this, let's take a look at one of the most, quote, controversial, unquote, items of Sasquatch history, and that's the Patterson-Gimlin film. With it, I'm going to raise 7 logical questions. Now, if I were going to film a hoax, number 1, why would I travel over 600 miles and 14.5 hours from my home to do so? I have the Cascade Mountains in my backyard and the Blue Mountains in my front yard. I live in the state that has the highest number of sighting reports in the nation. Why would I leave that to film a hoax? There's a Murphy's Law that pertains to this, called the Murphy's Law of Remote Locations. That states that the further you are from home, the more likely it is that you've forgotten something essential. There's a corollary to this law as well. The further you are from a highway, the more likely it is that what you need is not available locally. If this film were done at the end of some nondescript logging road in the Cascade Mountains, who would know the difference? How would you tell? From Union Gap, Washington, where Bob lives, and Roger lived further out than that even, to Louse Camp, where they camp outside of Orleans on Bluff Creek, was 603 miles and a 14.5-hour drive. Once there, if I were going to film a hoax, why would I spend 3 weeks waiting to make that film? Why would I spend all day riding horseback, spend all night driving the roads in a 1-ton stock truck, camping in a remote backcountry undeveloped campground, tending stock and trying to keep life running? For what purpose if I was going to film a hoax? Number 3. Why would I use the tag end of a roll of film to film my hoax? 76 feet of the 100-foot roll of film had been exposed filming Bob and his pack horse in the flora of the area. There was 24 feet left to film the hoax. The film makes the identification of the film site irrefutable, but it does nothing to create a film of great worth. Why would you choose a site 3.5 miles off the road and up a creek bottom in a spot inaccessible except on foot or on horseback? The second corollary to that Murphy's Law that I quoted earlier, when remote from a remote location, the chances of disaster increase exponentially, and with the degree of inaccessibility, the degree of that exponent increases exponentially. Number 5. Why would you choose to film next to a noisy creek? How would you communicate with your actor? The banks are tricky. Roger fell and very nearly ruined the whole day. All communications would have to be done by hand signals, and that makes it necessary to navigate across rough ground and across water. And why would you film it from behind? You were in control. You can do it the easy way. Filming from behind, you have zero communication with the actor. You have zero control of the route. You have zero ability to adjust anything in process. The photographer is constantly chasing his actor to get the scene. In a costume suit, the back is the worst part to make look right. No one films the suit from the rear if he has a choice in the matter, so said Bill Munns in the book When Roger Met Patty. Number 7. Why would you shoot only one take? Again, you're in control and have all the time in the world. You've run out of film and have no idea what kind of image you have. You've fallen in the creek. You don't know if your camera got wet and even worked or not. Any one of these 7 items is enough to create doubt in the possibility of a hoax. Putting all 7 of them together drives a nail into that hoax's heart. What does he who does not wish to believe say to this? How does he respond to these logical points? He doesn't. He simply ignores them. He will not hear them. And if he's pressed, that's simple. He attacks the messenger. Bob Hieronymus said he was the person in the suit. What has he said about this film? These are direct quotes taken from printed reports. I drove down to Orleans, and we drove about 4 or 5 miles up the Bluff Creek Road. I put on the suit, walked across the gravel while Roger filmed it. I then took off the suit and drove home. He was off by many miles. They were camped 23 miles off the road, not 4 or 5. From their camp, the film site was 3.5 miles up a creek with no roads. The film site is very easily identified from the film itself. It has been confirmed by many, many people over the years. His second statement? We took only one shot. We covered this earlier. The thought of doing that is absolutely ludicrous. His next statement? The suit was made from the hide of a red horse. That was later changed to a black horse. Next, it was a 2-piece suit. The bottom was on fishing waders, and the top was pulled on over my head. I wore football pads to beef it up. And here's the key. Roger owed me money, and everybody else made money off this, so I should too. Do you really think Bob Hieronymus would drive 14 hours, take one shot, and drive 14 hours home, all in one stretch, like he said he did? Show me the hemline. Show me the football pads. In fact, show me the suit. Nobody has ever produced a suit. In recap, evidence is important. 5 types of evidence. 1, empirical, the best. Measurable, quantifiable, acceptable even by science. 2, expert testimony. Good, but not perfect. 3, eyewitness. Again, good, far less than perfect, because our eyewitness testimony varies with what we thought we saw. 4th, anecdotal. Almost worthless, but not quite, as far as proof is concerned. So much of anecdotal relies on the reliability of the person relating the anecdote. That's a very important point to remember. I've had people say, if I don't see it, I'm not going to believe it. There is no way. Well, let me say this about that. I won't have people in my camp that I don't trust. If I don't think I can trust their word, they're not there. And yes, there are many, many people whose words I would take to the bank. Maybe it's a difference in age and maturity, but what I really think it is, the person who trusts no one does so because he himself is not trustworthy. It's like the thief. There isn't a thief alive who doesn't justify his being a thief because does everybody steal? It's the same with this person. Well, I can't believe anybody else because I tell lies. You know who the worst are at this? Police and lawyers. They live in lies. Everybody lies to them. Therefore, they can trust nobody. The last type of evidence, hearsay. It's worthless as evidence. Always Demand to know the source. How is this person qualified? What are his credentials? And to recap the logical pursuit. Why travel over 600 miles from home? 2. Why wait 3 weeks to film it? 3. Why use the last 24 feet of a roll of film rather than a brand new roll? Why choose a site 3.5 miles off the road? 5. Why choose to film on a noisy creek? 6. Why film the entire scene from behind? 7. Why shoot only one take? Don't box yourself in. Narrow thinking gets you nowhere. Keep your mind open. Listen and judge. I want you to know, I have never learned anything worth knowing from somebody who agrees with me totally. I learned those things worth knowing from those who have a different opinion and are not afraid to express it. Lastly, never raise your voice. Strengthen your argument. Thank you for your time. I hope this made sense to you, and I hope it gives you pause for reasoning of your own. The next time somebody asks you, where's the proof? Now you have an argument for them. If you like this, and like this type of work, please click the subscribe and like buttons below. It helps us, and I can do more for you.